record here, so we have this for reference.
No,
But
let me
then also,
let me put my AirPods in so I
oh
can
yeah,
just
yeah,
I just hear this.
perfect. Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
All right, can you hear me?
I sure can. You hear me okay?
Yeah, I got you.
Perfect. Let's see. Let me get this thing. There we go. So I'm working remote today, so I don't have my multiple monitors, so I have to excuse my little search bar. But what I'll do is I'll share my screen here, and then we can dive into, like, again, just kind of like a presentation walking you through the whole thing.
Yeah,
Let's try this. Make this full screen if I can.
you'll be able to send this recording also,
So,
right?
yeah, I can do that.
Cool.
But of course, even with that said, man, like as I go through these, this is really just kind of to give you a kind of a quick crash
Overview.
course.
Sure.
Like, yeah, yeah. So, like, if you have any questions or want me to get more specific on things, I certainly can, but don't feel the need to like retain all this now because moving forward, like you can always feel free to just call me or text me directly anytime you have a question on something. I just always like to have an open line of communication. And I know, and my director Matt Hendricks, he kind of filled me in on what you guys are looking at and kind of eyeing for, getting into that 10x insurance vertical.
Yep.
So with that said, I always like to, especially with guys, like, companies like you, I like to make sure you can always reach out to me anytime. So please feel free to take advantage of that. But here, let me
Cool.
go ahead and share my screen, and hopefully you can see this all right. Where did that go? There we go. Okay, now is it not? It says my sharing is paused. I don't know why it's doing that. Give me a second. Okay, let's try it this way. I don't think it's gonna work. I may just have to do it with my stuff up, but you'll get the picture anyway. So I'll try this way. Oh. Do you plan on, like, what's your schedule looking like for next week?
I'm pretty open, man. I'm pretty open next week.
Awesome. Okay. I'll be off every day next week except Friday. So if we want to, I mean, that said though, I'm always, I'm always plugged in one way or another. So if you're going through these initial onboarding things, you have a question or anything, please feel free to reach out. But okay, so again, really what I'm going to do today is just kind of zip you through kind of, what the first, we break this down into three different components really, but I'll take you, from start to finish, what you can expect. I'm going to go into all the different categories that we're going to dive into. I know you're waiting on a flight, so if at any time, you got to jump up and get off this call, that's totally fine. We can pick this up at a different time. But with that said, really going to, just go over the goals and objectives of the platform, give you that full overview, and then of course get us set up for, next steps going into next week and coming out of this call. So this might not look, you may have got a glimpse of this at, one of the events you've attended so far, but, until you go to the 360 is where they really dive into this kind of foundation here. But the reason they call it a platform 360 is because, we're getting into all of the different aspects of your business, right? So we start with those four core pillars, doing the marketing, doing the finance, doing the operations and sales, and the people development. But then those outer ring that you see are those category drivers, and those are representative of all the things that we're going to dive into specifically in those four major categories to the platform review. So really what we're trying to do as we go through this platform review, we're just trying to get a complete understanding of your business from the ground up. So, we want to see what's going well, what's not going well, some holes in your operation you may not be aware of. And then, of course, we're rolling that all into this 10-year growth model to help you guys, not only set those revenue targets, but develop the strategy to help you hit those targets. So when you get all the way to the end of this thing, you come out for your delivery, and you get this like 450, 500-page document that's going to be, like I said, that 10-year growth model. So these are the 10 different categories within that document that we dive into. And I'll get into, what that actual delivery looks like here in a little bit. But for now, I'm just going to walk you through each of these categories so that we can, you can just have an understanding of the different things we're going to really dive into. So first one being business assessment and philosophies. This one's very much ground level. We're looking at, first of all, how we're developing your company culture, right? So we take a deep dive into that mission statement, the vision statement, the core values. We also perform a complete SWOT analysis. Even though we recommend you do that on a yearly basis, like we'll kind of get this first one started for you. But of course, looking at those internal strengths and weaknesses, comparing them to the external opportunities and threats. And then, again, just kind of rolling that all into, there's a lot of my AirPods might die on me here, but rolling that all into, let me just take these out. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I got you.
Perfect. Okay. So anyway, but yeah, and then a lot of this, particularly when we get to the call, it's very ground level of just, how you're structured legally, what your office space looks like, et cetera, et cetera. But the main component of this is, like I said, going to be that the mission statement, vision statement, and those core values, and then the SWOT analysis. From there, we get into industry analysis, which is quite simply, what's going on in the industry and how your business stacks up, right? It's very much forward looking to say, okay, what are things that we expect that are going to happen in the industry, whether that's something you need to prepare for and how you're going to navigate those waters, or if it's something that you'll be able, an opportunity to be able to take advantage of. From there, we get into target market analysis. So as we're going through the discovery phase, this means we're taking a deep dive into your previous customer list, or in your case, I'm assuming client lists. And we're just looking to see, how these lists are compiled, what are the pockets of demographics that you're having the most success with, and where we can really lean into that into forward-looking marketing strategies so we can target, whether that's geographical areas or a demographic that you're not tapped into, and then strategizing how we can, continue to add on to that. From here, we get into competitor analysis. So this one, we ask you to identify 3 competitors who you feel you compete with the most. We'll identify several on our end as well, but really just looking to see, who you're fighting for that market share. And then, also those companies that maybe you want to exemplify. So if there's some juggernaut somewhere else in the country that's doing what you do, but on a much bigger level, we'll take a look at them as well to say, okay, well, how can we start to emulate that so we can, match where they're at? But then really it's just, again, where they have advantages over you, where you can adapt as needed, or you have advantages over them and you can lean into those. From there, we get into marketing strategy. So this one's generally a pretty high level of intrigue for most of our clients, but a lot of people are just thinking, okay, how am I going to generate more leads? But we take a much deeper dive than that. We'll look at historically everything you've done from a marketing side, but also, we're going to get into your personas. So the 20% of your customer base that's generating 80% of your revenue. And then really how we can develop on those to continue to target and really lean into those personas. But then we'll also get into your brand house, which is best described as like a filter, which all of your advertising and marketing outreach, all of that is getting, pushed through before it goes out live. And so all of those are, again, so we can, identify what is going to be the best marketing strategy for you to then hit those revenue targets. From there, we'll get into expansion and scaling. So with expansion and scaling, really what we're looking at is just saying, okay, when we identified or we started to analyze that target market we talked about, but then in terms of physical locations, like if you want to add additional offices, we're going to look and see, okay, based on these clusters of maps from the target market analysis, what makes the most sense, right? What's the next area you need to break into? And, that could be, oh, well, we're 100% digital. We don't really have physical locations. That's totally fine. In this section, that's where we start to look at, okay, well, where can we expand on, your product or service offerings, or where can we expand on, just how your team is laid out, whether that's adding new positions or whatever that case may be. But again, this all rolls into, of course, that 10-year growth model as how you're going to need to expand in the meantime. From there, we go into products and services. So this one's pretty straightforward. It's like what you guys do, what you provide, what that price point looks like to the client or customer, what the cost of that is to you, we'll identify, where you're the most profitable on those different service offerings. As I mentioned, as far as like needs to expand on what you're offering. And then we'll also take a deep dive into your pricing strategy. So, how you're coming up with those price points. Are you, utilizing the best strategy to set those price points? And also, any vendors that you're using, how often you're auditing them, and of course, the strategy of the prices that you're getting from them. From there, we'll do sales process. So this one, obviously we're going to get a full understanding of from when a lead is generated all the way until they sign on the dotted line, who's handling that lead, what systems it's getting put into, and then of course, making that as efficient as possible. But then also, we'll mystery shop all of your competitors so you guys can have an understanding of, how you're handling those inbound calls, and you'll get an understanding of how the competition is doing it too. But, mostly the main focus here is, like I said, just really dialing into that sales specific strategy so we can make sure that it's as efficient and productive as possible. From there, we'll go into people development alignment. So this one, I'm sure at this point you've at least heard of or somewhat familiar with the R3 assessment. You'll take that at the 360, but you'll get a full map of how you and then the employees you identify as 10X employees. You'll get that heat map of how it's all comprised. You'll have those communication suggestions. So really, the whole point of that is just to as Brandon always says, take the emotion out of the business, right? So how we can just have very tactical and productive conversations amongst the team. But beyond that, what we'll get into is we'll look at your entire HR dashboard. So all of your HR documentation, the HR process, really just looking at how that, what's going on now and how that can be improved upon, especially as you're growing and expanding and adding to your team. And then finally, even though this is one of the first ones we'll get into, it's on here last, but we have financial modeling and reporting. This is really like going to be just like every business, finance is kind of the backbone, but this will really be the backbone of your platform and your 10-year model, because, we'll look at everything historically you've been doing. We'll dive into, we'll dive into the P&L and balance sheet. And that's really where you're going to get the most tangible insight the soonest, I would say, because really how this is set up is for a few months, it's just going to feel like we're just asking a bunch of questions and gathering a bunch of data without really like giving you anything to go off of. And that's really like once we get into finances, which is, I believe, the fourth call, is really where we'll be able to say, hey, start doing this, making these adjustments, because everything before that is really just more informational. Now that said, if we get to any given week and you've got some pain point in your business or you're dealing with something, like, you can always rely on us to be support there. If it's not something that I can directly support you with, there's going to be somebody in the organization that's going to have, at least some guidance for you. So, like I said, it's going to feel like it's just me asking a bunch of questions for the first while, but, always feel free to bring in, the support you need, on any given call we're on, and we can, certainly help you out there. But that's pretty much just a crash course on all those categories we'll go through. And so now it's just really kind of some housekeeping. And again, I'm gonna give you a kind of paint the picture of what delivery looks like for you. So as I mentioned before, this is broken down into 3 phases. So the first phase is what we're kicking off today. This is the discovery phase, right? So again, we're just collecting the data, making sure we have all of a full picture of everything we need before we get into that design phase, which is when myself and the rest of the team all put our heads together and we start to build out that model. And then finally we get into delivery, which is going to be a 2-day event. It, usually they're in Scottsdale. Sometimes we have them in Miami. But you'll come out, it'll be live in person. You'll be in the room with about, I'd say, 10 to 15 other business owners. So it's a much smaller, more intimate, interactive group than, what you'll see at the 360, which is more large scale. But when we go through that delivery, what we do is, for each of those categories I just showed you, we'll have, maybe like 30-40 minutes where we talk up front and speak to the whole crowd. But then we'll break out into, and we'll come and sit with you individually and say, okay, this, and contextualize it all for what that means for your business. So like I said, it's much more hands-on. It's much more, interactive for you as the business owner, not only with, our team, as we'll be working with you directly and walking through this with your business specifically, but also just, being able to bump elbows with all the other business owners in the room. We've seen a ton of collaboration come out of these things. So just a little bit of a silver lining there. But yeah, like I said, the delivery is going to be, you know, much unlike any of the other events you'll attend of ours. This right here is just really like a kind of a crude breakdown of the scheduling of all this. The only thing I would say of note here is that you see that we have you start on 10x employee, and then there's a 2-week lag when we have your employees start on 10x. Excuse me, we have you start on 10x owner, and then there's a 2-week lag before we have your employees start, and that's simply just so they can use you as a resource, because at that time you'll have been, you know, going through and comfortable with the system, and then, you know, they can just, if they get snagged somewhere, they can use you as a resource. This is a little bit more detailed. I'll actually send you a copy of this in my follow-up email. This just breaks down all the different, you know, subjects rather, week to week as we go through this. So this is one to, you know, just like save it on your computer somewhere or print it out, stick it on your board, just so you can use it as a reference point. But like I said, don't feel the need to do anything with it now. I'll send this, I'll link this in my follow-up email. This slide's a little outdated actually, because we don't do the 10x owners live anymore, but we have 2 calls that are hosted on Wednesdays. And so at 2:30 Eastern, we have 10x employees. So anybody that the 5 employees you sign up for 10x employee, they can all join that call and just hear our leadership and executive team kind of speak more on the things they're learning through those trainings. And then likewise, we have that owners roundtable, which takes place at 3 p.m. Eastern, where again, it's a large forum, so like, but you can come on there and again just kind of hear our executives and leadership team speak more on what you're learning through the 10x owner training. And then you'll get links to these as we go in and get you guys set up for those different trainings. This here is an example of a JOT form. So that's got most of the data that you send into me is going to be sent via JOT form. So it's going to be, you know, just a link in an email that you click. It takes you into a portal. It asks you the questions one by one, or might ask you to upload a document, and then you hit submit and it sends it back to me. Just keeps things really nice and neat, and most importantly, secure, because everything's password protected. And, you know, it just makes it, you know, a lot easier to send a lot of this data back and forth. So coming out of this call, there's going to be a handful of emails you get from me. The first is just going to be like the generic follow-up email from this. That's going to have, you know, kind of homework going into our next call. It's going to have all the pertinent information coming out of this call that you need. And then, of course, you know, just again, getting us set up for moving forward. The next email is going to be an invite for our recurring weekly meeting. So the way we do it is we just pick a day and a time, week to week. We keep that. And we'll just, you know, plan to meet at that time every week. Of course, things happen, you know, you're running a business, you go on vacation, God forbid you get sick, whatever it is, you know, there is flexibility there. You know, we can always like look to reschedule things. But essentially, you know, just making sure that we kind of stick to that date and keep it constant. And then the third email you're going to get from me is to get yourself set up on CEO. So that's the platform we use that houses your R3, your PPF goals, your 10x owner and trading, anything else you're doing. So if you're on Cardone U, it'll you know, that'll be housed there. But in any case, all you have to do is it'll shoot you an email. You just go in there, create a password, and you're pretty much done. And then, you know, once we get your employees signed up here in a couple of weeks, that they'll do the same thing. But there'll be those 3 emails, and then separately, you're going to be reached out to by the financial services team. They're going to be requesting you to send in the 48 months of P&L and balance sheet, as well as a couple other financial documents, so they can begin their initial analysis. But then you'll also be reached out to by the 10x scale team, so they can at least, you know, show you what's offered with scale that you get for free with platform, whether you decide to use it or not. You know, it's not, you know, obviously it's optional to you if you already have a pretty established CRM. But at least, you know, just kind of an intro so you can see what it all offers and if you want to take advantage of that. And then, so for our next call, what we're going to discuss are your PPF goals. And I guess I should have asked this at the beginning of the conversation, but are you the sole owner, or is there anyone else involved?
No, I'm the sole owner.
Perfect. Okay. So yeah. So what we'll do then is there'll be a JOT form in that email I send you. It's going to take you into and ask you to write out your PPF goals. And so, you know, when we think about these PPF goals, they want to be in SMART goal format. So that's specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, timely. And then, so what we'll do on our next call is I'll go through with you on your goals to kind of make sure they're in that format. Obviously, because that gives us a compass of where you're trying to take the business, the things you're trying to accomplish. But then also on that call, what I'm going to do is I'm going to be kind of killing two birds with one stone and showing you as the owner, as you go and roll this PPF goal process out to your leadership team, how you can kind of show them the ways of developing these goals as such. And so then that way, they can do that for everyone that reports to them as well. But more to come on that on our next call. But for now, just know that there's that jot form. So you'll see that in my follow-up email, and then and with all jot forms, I forgot to mention this, but we ask that you get them into us 48 hours before that next call happens, and just so that we can make sure that we can have time to go through everything and prepare for ourselves. So when it's something like this, maybe if you get it to me at least a couple hours ahead of time, we should be fine. But there are some that are a little more complex that I will have to dive into. So we just ask, shoot for that 48-hour mark. If it's 24 hours, not the end of the world. But in any case, so I'll send you that one for this next week. And then we'll, that's what we'll cover on next week's call. This is just a really long-winded way of saying you're going to get out what you put into this process, right? If you're at least showing up week to week, or you're at least, in communication with me where we're, in some form or another, moving the ball forward week in, week out, this is going to go very smooth for you, and we'll get through this thing in 6 or 7 months, and it'll be great. Where we see holdups is, believe it or not, despite the investment you guys are making, we see a lot of people who just, they'll put calls on hold for weeks or months at a time. Even they won't send us in the data we need because they're just, too busy or whatever they're doing. So things like that, where we start stalling for, like I said, weeks, months at a time, that's where we see that lag, and it can just draw this thing out for a lot longer than it needs to be before you can actually start taking action on the plan that we develop. And this is, I've already really covered most of this, but this is just speaking to what you're going to experience in that delivery. So, if you remember, it's a 2-day event. You come in, it's going to be very, intimate room where we're sitting down with you and working with you directly, as opposed to just speaking to a large audience. And with all that, man, welcome to the Cardone Ventures family. I know that was a ton of information to just throw at you, out of nowhere. But like I said, everything pertinent I will include in that follow-up email. And then again, you can always just feel free to, you'll have my number if you don't already in this email I send you. So just, always feel free to shoot me a text, give me a call, whatever it is. But with everything I just went through, do you have any immediate questions for me?
Yeah, awesome, man. Good stuff. So I know that the 10X 360, that's a 2-day live event, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So the platform, are there so I know, because I heard somebody say, well, there's the 360 and there's a platform. So is it two separate events, or I know you do the 360 first and then the platform, which is a kind of the 7-month process?
Right. So usually what happens is we don't have people start their platform prior to going to the 360, because again, a lot of the stuff I just went through doesn't really make as much sense. But when you go to that 360, it's a 2-day event where they go kind of like surface level on all of those things I just talked about. But that one's much more, you're going to be in the room with like 100 people, right? And it's like one person at the front, just kind of speaking broadly. Whereas, what we're starting now, 6 months down the road, 7 months down the road, that 2-day event is where, you're going to be in a much smaller room, and we're going to be working with you individually, going over the plan that we've been developing over the last 6 months.
Got it. Okay. That makes sense. Yeah, not too many questions now. I'll be looking forward to some emails, following up on some stuff. And yeah, I'm excited to get this started.
Yeah, I would say the biggest thing now is, the easiest to kind of put to forget about is just making sure when that financial services team reaches out to you, just like try, at this point, I'm curious, just because we're so close to the end of the year, that they may, it may make sense, like, oh, well, let's just go ahead and close out 2023 and then send them over. But I'll leave that to them how they want to handle it. But just be on the lookout for that intro call from them. They'll set up, like a 15-minute call, and just request you send in those financial documents. The rest of the stuff, like I said, it's pretty straightforward. I'll send it all to you now. But the biggest thing out of what I'm going to send you is just getting yourself set up on CEO. And then just, having that job for them complete for next week's call. Like I said, I will be out all week next week except Friday. If you have availability, we can plan that. But I'd say for now, if we just are looking at a weekly recurring call, what is typically the best day and time that works for you?
Let's see. Mornings are always best. So we do a daily conference call Monday from 9 to 9:30, and then Tuesday through
Okay.
Friday, 8:30 to 9 o'clock. I'm assuming you don't do weekends, Saturdays, or it's typically
Not
Monday through
typically for
Friday.
calls.
Okay.
Yeah, it's typically Monday through Friday. My so I'm on Mountain Time now.
Oh,
So
that's
I'll
right.
be 2 hours behind you. Well, when I'm in Scottsdale, that is. So I mean my mornings are fairly open. What day of the week would you prefer?
Let's do. Trying to think Mondays. Mondays 8:30 to 9 o'clock. Mondays are great.
Okay.
It doesn't matter, man. I'm on my own time, so whatever days. Preferably mornings, just so I can get out the way. I know you're on Mountain Time, so if you're 2 hours, before me, if
Yeah.
it's 9 o'clock, it's 7 a.m. your time. So let's just say you start at 9, it's 11 my time. So yep, that's fine.
Yeah. What
Um,
about let's see. We could do we could do Mondays at 11 if that works for you.
yeah, that's great. When I did 11,
Okay.
which is
So next
you know
week
what?
we'll just
Let
a
me do this
second.
instead. What do your Wednesdays and Fridays look like? Because I'm in the real estate club. And
Mhm.
a lot of times I'll break off my day to hop on a Zoom call or go on the pitcher deals, pitcher deal call.
Yeah.
Um, Wednesdays or Fridays probably will work best just because I'm already off for that time.
Okay. Well, then in that case, yeah, let's do Fridays at 11, and then that'll keep us
Okay.
consistent with next week too. So yeah, let's do this. And then is yours just real quick, remind me your email while I'm on this.
Yeah, it's nasb.nick
Oh,
at
yep, I got it. Dot
gmail.com.
Nick. Yeah, perfect. I
Yeah,
thought
and
that was one I
I
just
was going
wanted
to
to
tell
make
you, I may want to even just create a completely separate email for this, just because I got a lot of shit going in and out of that email. And
sure. Okay.
this is going to be a pretty intense program. I feel like so. I may want to switch the email, but if I do, I'll do that with you.
Yeah, absolutely. And that, if we ever just change this around,
Yeah.
that's no problem
Well,
at all. Okay. So then do Fridays at 9 a.m. Perfect. So yeah, I'll get that invite sent out to you here, and then that's perfect. Because like I said, it'll keep us on track if we meet on the 5th, or excuse me, on the what would that be, the 29th. So cool, man. Yeah, I'll send that out to you now. Like I said, just look for that job form, and then the other thing is, a scale team, they'll get you set up as well, but that's less urgent than us just making sure we get the finances in order or on hand so we can start our analysis. Yeah, I'll send all that to you in a follow-up email along with a couple others. But yeah, unless you have anything else for me right now, we can call
awesome.
it.
The 231, is that your cell?
Yeah, that's a direct line to myself. So yeah, you can reach out to
Okay,
that anytime.
awesome. Sweet, man. Yeah, that works great. And if you can send me the Zoom call, it just has a reference for my end
Yeah.
at the
So
end.
yep, I'll send you that invite. It'll have the link. Yeah, I don't know if you use Google Calendar or whatever you're using, but yeah, I highly recommend just saving it on your calendar. And then
Yep.
yeah, there'll be a direct Zoom link. You can just hop in and we'll pick this up on the 29th.
Awesome. Hey, thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Absolutely, man. If you have anything else, like I said, just reach out anytime. Otherwise, we'll be talking here in a little bit.
Sounds great, Dominic. Thank you. Talk to
All
you.
right, hey, have a safe flight.
You too.
All right, bye.